It started coming out the other day that John Papaduke might be coming on Coast to Coast Pinball. I had a lot of emails and messages and whatnot saying, what on earth are you doing? Why is John coming on the show? Don't you know the situation? Are you dense? I know the situation, and I think there's a story to tell here, and I think that John is the guy that needs to tell it. So that will be episode 197 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast commentary. I'm a man out of quarters. Joining you tonight, not live, on Saturday, September 26th, 2015. I met John Papaduke about a year and a half ago. Something like that. Maybe a little longer back than that. And at the time, I was trying to get John to come on the show to talk about his history in pinball, because I knew he was a little sensitive towards the way people on the internet jumped on him and got on him about his games taking a long time. And I think that in the past, since I've met John, about a year and a half, something like that, a lot has changed in John's world. People have obviously, collectively, those that have sent him money for games have... the attitudes have changed. The attitudes towards Zidware and John Papaduke's company has changed. People want their games. John is, I wouldn't even say at a crossroads. We're past the crossroads, and John is trying to figure out what is next. And John reached out and thought it might be a good time to tell his story here on the show. And so that is what episode 197 will be. It will be a pretty thorough interview with John Papaduke about mostly where we stand now. I don't think it's appropriate, really, to focus on much other in trying to be respectful of those who potentially feel like they have lost a lot of money trying to buy a game from John that they have not yet seen. That is going to be the focus of this conversation. It's very unedited. I could have gone in and cut and edited this down. It's long. This is probably the longest episode of Coast to Coast Pinball ever. I let John talk. I asked him the questions that I think needed to be asked. If I missed anything, it was either just me not feeling it was the right time to ask it, or it was just didn't come up in conversation. But I think the nuts and bolts of what I wanted to accomplish having John on the show, and I think why he even wanted to come on the show, bears out here. And I think that you get to hear the story of a pinball designer who was highly regarded, who stepped into a new world of independent-built, small run pinball machines, and people were quick to back him. And you see the fall that seems to have happened from there, where a lot of money was sent in and still no games have been shipped out. I think that there's a lot of insight to be gained from John's story. It was a tough interview to do, because as most people will tell you that go meet John in person and spend any time with John, John's a very likable guy. I like John Papaduke a lot. But we have a bad situation here. It's not good. It's unfortunate. And I think you will hear that John knows that. So I will save the rest of my commentary on this. This is a very, intense interview, I think, and I appreciate John for having I don't want to use the word the guts or courage, but a lot of people wouldn't come on this show and talk about a situation as tough as this, as frank as he does here. And my hat's off to him. There's a lot of mistakes that have been made here, and I think we get into some of that. So anyway, I don't really know what I'm saying other than I'm trying to let you know that you may want to listen to this one in parts. It goes pretty long. I didn't edit this. I could have cut it all apart. I just kind of let it flow because I thought that, if nothing else, episode 197 of Coast to Coast Pinball will be a snapshot in time of what Mr. Papaduke, what J-Pop thought about what has happened over the past few years and where we are now. So without further ado, an evening with John Papaduke. I would like to welcome tonight to Coast Pinball, Mr. John Papaduke. How are you, sir?
Oh, hi, Nate. Oh, I'm doing fine. So just back from church.
Back from church on a Saturday evening. So
Saturday is the true Sabbath. Sunday is the day of rest.
That is what I've heard.
Yep.
So I'm glad we're getting to talk, and I know that it's been a tumultuous last year or so, but I think it's a good time, and I feel like with you kind of reaching out a little bit, it would be a nice time to tell the story of John Papaduke, Zidware, Magic Girl, the other games, answer some questions, clear up confusion, and just kind of hear the story from the man himself. If for no other reason, I'm interested in hearing it, and I think it would be good to have it all on record, and I kind of hope that's what you wanted to do today.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's kind of a long tale of, and woe in some cases, but tales of glory in other cases, and all of us pinball people or industry people have kind of a similar experience. It ebbs and flows, and we move from project to project or company to company, and we just try and apply what we know and kind of move it forward that way. And it's the pinball community is actually very small, and it's even smaller when you get down to the creative core, the people actually making games, manufacturing games. Even with new people who've come on board the last 3 years, it's still very small compared to other industries. So it's
very true, because when we saw the shutdown of Bally Williams, there was just a handful of you guys who were the sort of the rock stars, the designers coming out of that, and everyone sort of scattered over the next decade and did different things, and some worked for Stern, some did their own thing. You ended up kind of doing all sorts of stuff. You taught design, you designed apps, but I think pinball was sort of always that common theme and sort of your love. Talk about those years where you weren't at Williams anymore, and this is before you had the idea to start doing full-size pinball machines, like a la Magic Girl.
Well, I think, I've never called myself a rock star, and I've always had trouble with the legendary thing. I know, Ben and Charlie would always say that, and it's like, well, I really came into WMS on the coattails of Pat Lawler, Steve Ritchie, Larry DeMar, Python, Foots. I mean, a whole group of guys, and so I'm kind of like I wouldn't say like a tier 2 designer, but I'm definitely one of the younger designers, and I had great mentors or great teachers, and those guys made a lot of money for WMS, so they allowed some of us to come in, get design positions. We were paid fairly well, and we got all the accoutrements you need to kind of go ahead. And and obviously we use ideas from those senior designers. They just kind of come up with stuff all day long, and kind of off you go. I think partly, if I did anything well at WMS, was just the ability to work with the team and pick themes. We were able to go in and kind of find themes that hadn't been done in a long time and bring those up. So hence you have Magic, or, at that time Arabian Nights kind of was very popular. And we had a Circus Maximus game going for a while, kind of an ancient Roman kind of stadium, and, lions popping out of the playfield and all sorts of stuff. So, and we were charged to do that. So I think that's one thing our team did well. We just didn't take whatever we were asked to do. We kind of said, well, let's think about that a bit. And in return, those games earned money. At that time, the games were made to earn money. So we didn't have collectors. We didn't have people calling us, can you do this? Can you do that? And customize, customization, stuff like that. So our only mandate was get it on time to production, and the game had to earn above average earnings. And so you were considered successful if you, basically held those two tenets and kind of moved forward. But it was definitely a learning experience. I got totally kind of destroyed at when I got to WMS. Just the way they do things, their system, and my way of building games that I brought from Bally just didn't mesh with their Rockstar system. Their system was quick and refined and tuned and to make great games. So some of us, and myself included, we had to basically be broken and to kind of be rebuilt into something better that we could withstand the stress and the pressure. Very much, a lot of the same things I deal with today. But that was all through that training. And Bally, we didn't, Bally was, I guess, a softer design group. We didn't really kind of go balls to the walls on stuff. And we just like, that's good enough, put it in the game. Where Williams, they would say, like, hey, man, that sucks. You need to change that. Or you need to think about, doing something else. Or so it was definitely kind of in your face. And definitely that's part of my design I guess, workbook. So, people get offended and, and I apologize. I mean, I love making pinball and I love working with people. But I also, I kind of have a hard side that was created in those WMS days. And it's to get the best out of people, to get them to work hard. And that's what they did with us. It's not always happy, but these games last a long time. And so therefore, why not put our best efforts in, redo something, update code, redraw it, whatever it might be, and, make it great. In this case, all those things have really kind of hurt me, or at least hurt the projects I'm trying to finish, because it means delays, it means you're spending more money, you're trying for excellence, you're trying for perfection. And it's it's difficult, and you kind of balance that. How much do I push it, and how much do I just kind of get the game out the door? And I'm not really good at putting a game out and then having people kind of trash it, because it's like, well, I worked on this game for a year and a half. People should like it. I should be smart enough to at least put the team together and all of us work hard and come up with something great. So I would be very disappointed if I worked a long time. I am disappointed and then people say, well, this and that's not done. That doesn't look very good. The artwork's not very good, whatever it might be.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Did you have any experiences at Bally or Williams where one of the games you worked on was released and you regretted not being able to go back and change something or fix something? You saw something later and you thought, I really wish I could have done this? At WMS, the only things I'd say that were kind of anti-designer were obviously we worked in a context. So you were in it was like the Twilight Zone. It was a period of time. So I get the Arabian Nights one all the time. That rule's bad and that rule sucks and you got to change that. And I'm like, well, at the time, that was the best game we could make within that time frame. The game earned very well, upwards of $350 to $400 a week. No pinball earns that today. Obviously, the whole arcade and coin drop street location thing was different back then, but that was our mandate. So, in some of those games, we just had to stop. We just had to stop working. And I think design-wise, I think Circus had the most kind of ball hang-ups out of prototype. Once we built the prototypes, just with the ramps, and everything is just not linear. It's all over the place, and the ball would get stuck everywhere. And then on the Ringmaster, we chose to use micro switches instead of optos. So I think that was like a fatal error, one of those you capitulate at costing and say, okay, we'll keep the micro switches in instead of adding the $7 more for the opto set to go in there. But that's the one that hurt operators, and we didn't have a choice to do that. But one thing that happened a lot, at least on my games, if I took some time off, and none of us took really much time off. I haven't had a vacation in 8 years. I'll go a couple days. I'll take a couple days off and with the kids and then come back. But I don't do like a Disney cruise or kind of, stuff like that. 2 weeks in Hawaii. It's just not part of it. But back then, literally you take like 2 days off. And then when you come back, your manager would say, oh, well, we need to talk to you. And what would happen is, while you're away, there'd be a group of people led by designers, other artists, people in management. And they would say, like, we don't like this on your game. We want you to change it. And partly it was I was a new designer, so obviously I had to deal with that. But all the games had those and battles. And one I remember was Arabian. We're talking about Arabian. There's a small group of senior designers, and they wanted the spinning lamp off the game, the disc, the whole assembly.
And the theory was, well, it blocks the shots, it's in the way, it's confusing things, and it's like, well, you kind of don't get it. That's not why it's there. It has nothing to do with what you just talked about. And actually, the rule set for the spinning lamp, at least at its core, is from Playboy, a game in the 70s, I believe, designed by Jim Patla at Bally. And they had really cool music when you would get a bonus. Dun, 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 dun. And so we basically copied that same idea. And I do that a lot in my game development. I'll go back 20, 30, 40 years, and I'll find kind of nostalgic or just really great old pinball stuff that's been forgotten and move it forward, along with inventing new things. So we've seen that in some of the other newer games today. They're going back to games from the 90s, and they're basically just pulling mechanisms from those games and putting them on new games. So kind of that same philosophy that these are, they're really good things that need to be brought up into pinball, kind of current pinball, and we do that. But I mean, that's kind of what I suffered from, people wanting to change the games and making like a fatal error in design somewhere. But at WMS, there was a lot of stuff in place that would save us kind of from doing that, because, we had like 500 people, 700 people in the factory, huge factory. And so they couldn't allow me to make a mistake or be late because I'm putting, 500 people out of work, or people can't come in for 2 weeks because I didn't finish something on time. So there was always that pressure and stress of manufacturing and, of capitalism. And I mean, that's what I'm learning now the last 3 months or the last 6 months is I set up, my new company, Zidware, to make beautiful games. And they are well engineered, and I mean, all the rest of it. But I didn't set it up to manufacture them, meaning that wasn't like the goal, that on this date, this game must be in production and it must be at this cost. And therefore, we have to hire these people to make sure you get there. And I came about it from a different philosophy. And now when I look back at what Stern does now and what we did back at WMS, that was the philosophy driving everything. It's just basic capitalism. You need a profit. You have a very focused team. You need to be in production, and you have customers. And if you don't have customers, there's no revenue. And if you don't have revenue, you have to close your business, or you have to, borrow money or get investors or do something.
So with that, and sort of, I mean, I kind of see the theme here.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's interesting stuff. I get a lot from you, the artist vibe. I get the design vibe, the artist vibe. And I think a lot of people have always thought that about you, and you have a great vision, and there's so much, that has come out of your games that's like, oh, that's very John Papaduke. And when you say, you wanted to set this company up to design beautiful games and make beautiful games, which I think you have been on the road to do that, I think where we start hitting these walls and where people get really upset, confused, and you're going to start, you have been starting, obviously, feeling that coming to you. You had release dates announced for almost all these games at some point. It was generally like, hey, here's this game I want to build, and I expect to ship it around this time. And so then to now say, I didn't expect to have to build them, is that just a mismanagement from the beginning? Is that just stuck in a way of trying to pitch the game to sell it because that's how a full company would have done? Why is there that sort of, kind of, I don't know, dual message happening there?
Yeah, well, I think I think you're right. I think when I started all of this, nobody had ever started a small boutique custom pinball maker. So I was definitely in uncharted waters. And the old days, we just made a play field. We basically would make a play field. It would get put into a standard cabinet with, all the hardware and, I mean, all the other kind of systems and documentation and wiring. I mean, it's just dozens and dozens and dozens of things layered up. But I know for the longest time, and I always tell people that, it was like after about 8 months working on Magic Girls, that was the early, spring 2012, then it was kind of like, oh, man, there's a ton of work, because I went to, vendors to help out, pinball vendors, and they would say, no, we're doing work for this other, group. We can't do your work. And so it really kind of slowed things down. And I had to basically find or train or resurrect or just build here different parts of the game that I just couldn't get from vendors that I was hoping to rely on to get all of that stuff. And so so as I started to run the company, it's easy at the beginning because you don't have any customers. Technically when you start, you don't have any customers, and you're kind of moving ahead. But then as you move along, as the 6-month increments go by, all of a sudden, you're engineering a cabinet. You have trim that goes around the cabinet. Oh, and you need a driver board, and then you need cabling, so you got to have a cable guy, and then you have lighting, and all these things kind of compounded, and it just seemed to get kind of worse and worse and worse. And so the schedules that I created, and I would always mark on the schedules. They're marked everywhere, subject to change, but those were like my best estimates because people want to see something. They want to see that you're kind of doing this. But I know even on Jack's case, at Jersey Jack, I mean, they had positioned for a 2-year release from start, and I mean they didn't hit that at all, and they had 10 times way more resources than I've ever had.
Sure.
And, so I think we've all kind of learned. I know I have that the pride and the I guess arrogance or confidence. I mean, they're all kind of wrapped into one. But just the things we brought from WMS into kind of this new age of collectors and custom pinball and modding and all of that. It kind of doesn't work. It just because you don't have those 30 people on your design team to help you. You have 8, and you 2 of those are volunteer. The other 6 you have to pay, and kind of off you go. And the old days, we would just put stuff. We would take it down to the cable department, draw this, get this updated, and off it went. But it's So it. I think the more I moved along in development, the amount of work just increased just so much. And the problem is it has to be done correctly. So, we have our own custom cabinet. Originally we started with the WMS style cabinet. That was easy. And then with the LCD and the different things that we were trying to do, it was like, well, we're going to have to change the cabinet a bit. So we applied for a patent, and we got the patent for the cabinet. But to just engineer a cabinet and to have it made correctly with a new wood vendor, we have a new wood vendor, that took like a year. And the part of the problem is you want to have it where it's just manufacturable, meaning you just say, make X amount of these cabinets and they're all perfect and all the parts fit in. And, a pinball cabinet, it doesn't look like there's much there. But actually, when you look at all the different parts that fit on, and obviously just what we did or trying to do, there's just some more extra stuff on it, some more trim and extra kind of nice things. But it's one thing saying, I have a cabinet done, so is it a quality cabinet? And it's another thing, well, is everything going to fit together, 98% of the time? Because you can always build one game, but can you build, 10 games or 20 games? And they're all exactly the same. So I think when you take that same type of philosophy of the amount of work and you're really going into the unknown because no one's ever done anything like this. And now it maybe looks easier because we have other companies now that have done this or putting their games together. And so there I look like, I'm the doofus now because I'm way behind kind of the 8 ball. But at the time it was like, you just do not have the answers on these things. So do you decide, do I not do this? Do I stop? Or do you decide, well, let's move forward and let's try and gather the best people we can, try and learn, try and give feedback as best we can. So that's where those schedules came from. And you get destroyed, man, because it's obviously you're I won't say like guessing, but you're putting your best foot forward to say, hey, this is how long I think this is going to take, and really you're like wrong. You're totally wrong. And then now it's like, oh, you got to start from scratch and kind of go from there. And obviously, this company is a small company. We've done a lot of work with not a lot of money, in the sense where we didn't have like LNG. I heard they had $3 or $5 million to start. We didn't nowhere near that amount of money, but I'm trying to make games better than we did in the 90s. So I think, like I said, with the pride, right, with the pride and the arrogance, oh, we can do this, you kind of set yourself up for almost an impossible task. It's maybe a good meaning task. You're trying to do a good thing, but actually you're not very smart. John's really an idiot because he's trying to do these things, and now he has, a lot of unhappy customers, and he's late, and on and on. And obviously, you don't start out that way to do that, but it just kind of goes that way. And running a business is a lot of work. There's just a lot of things, and you can't afford to pay everybody. I had people would say, well, why don't you hire this person, that person? I had a lot of people that I went through, and the people just, they just didn't always work well. They're on the internet or, doing different things. And we had at the early bit, sending statements to wrong people, and just, because you can't check everything when you're an owner. So it's just
early on in Zidware, when you were kind of finding your way, why was there such a quick announcement of Game 2? Because Magic Girl was announced in the summer of 2011, and the Zombie Adventureland game, originally with Ben Heck, seemed to be announced not too long after that. And it just seems, with all this undertaking, to then say we're going to do 2 at once seems like just kind of piling on yourself.
Yeah, well, there you go. There again is that misjudgment, John's bad decisions. I mean, I started working with Ben kind of in the summer, later in that summer when I started Magic Girl. So he would help me cut playfields, and we'd use the MakerBot, all sorts of stuff. And him and Charlie, I mean, they were always very helpful. They extended everything to me. And then after, it must have been like later that fall or around Christmas time, it was just kind of like, or maybe around Expo time. It was, I've always liked Cyclone, Python's game. So, and nobody's done an amusement park game. Well, not yet. I'm sure somebody will now. But, and then it was like, gee, amusement park game, zombies, Ben, and it was like, man, that's a really great pinball theme. So Jeremy sketched it up. He did kind of a sketch, and we just put it on the side. And I brought it up one time when I went to Ben's studio, and they were kind of like, well, what's that, and this and that, and but it kind of took off like from there, so it wasn't supposed to be just kind of like a zombie flesh type game. It was always supposed to be something just more like we would have made in the 90s. So I think in that case, in many cases, it took legs, and I think also for my case, I was trying to prove, to just show people that, well, everything that we develop is just going to be kind of really original and really well thought out, really nicely drawn, and just a really like classy type of effort. And because we had a thing at Bally, like everybody has a dream game. Everybody in the pinball community, so everybody listening, they're sketching at home and they have different ideas for games. But can you make your second game better than your first game? And that's the hard part. So right away, that it just makes it much more difficult. So I think in this case, I think that it just kind of took off on its own, and it kind of went from there. So was it the best decision? Probably not. But again, you're kind of in the moment, and people are kind of happy you're doing something, and sending you their hard-earned money, and you're investing it and building up the company, and trying to do it as best that you can in a proper fashion. And so it's it's really hard to explain. It's definitely like a wave, and so I don't know.
What do you say to somebody who looks at this and says, okay, he started with, because from where I look, I don't see how the numbers could have worked to build a game as ambitious as Magic Girl and only sell, I think the original number was 13, but there may have been a few more.
Yeah, and it went to 19. No, you can't make any money, right?
I don't even know if you can build the game with that money coming out on that with so many custom pieces.
Like I said, around the 8th month or 10th month, then I started, we started really seeing what all this is costing. How much is labor? Labor is very high. And I think that summer, I had sent a letter to all the Magic Girl customers kind of explaining that basically this is kind of where we're at. And, just from going through development and everything, it's just not going to work for 19 games. And we're going to have to release more. Maybe the first 19 games for the people who were kind of the early pioneers to get all this going. Their games would be uniquely different, so it wouldn't be part of the larger group. But in pinball, I mean, even with the numbers we see with the manufacturers now, which are very small compared to the old days, you can't make 25 games because it costs you almost the same amount of money to develop that game as it did back in the 90s. I mean, it's just expensive. And if you want something that's really, really half decent, it just takes time and it's expensive. So you need to release more games. And so there's no doubt about it. And I mean, that's the part of the business I'm learning have learned that, it just doesn't make sense from a business standpoint at all to look through these numbers. So then that's the conundrum. So if we knew everything at the very beginning, then does that mean you don't move forward? You don't do anything. So you just, I'm done. And we're not going to make any more games. And then just kind of let things move as they are. Or, do you move ahead? And that's, in America, I mean, that's what people do. Many people kind of risk a lot or risk it all to try and achieve something great or something new. And that's, we call that the American dream. And a lot of times those people make mistakes. They destroy themselves. There's that one guy, that McAfee, the McAfee.
The virus software guy.
Yeah, I remember growing up, but now he's like hiding. He's somewhere, in Africa, I don't know, somewhere. And I don't know exactly the whole story, but it's kind of like that this guy's company, he built all the software that we used to install in the 90s in all our Macs. And now he's a fugitive or he's hiding or, I don't know the whole story, but, in Africa or somewhere, he can't come back to America, or something's happened. So it's like, well, what's with that, right? How can this smart guy who had this giant company employing all these people, now he does YouTubes from secret places behind coconut trees but that's American, Nate, and it's
John, was there a plan somewhere to catch up? Because from what I see, you weren't catching up with the business. You had the Magic Girl customers in with their money sent to you. You now had the zombie game customers, which I believe the number was around 100, I want to say. Yep. So now you had that money sent into the company. Next, we have an Alice in Wonderland game announced. Did you have a plan on paper to catch up and get the first group product and then sort of move forward? Because it just seemed like it was every time you got to a certain point, it was new game, more money. Now what? And in hindsight, looking back, I'm just wondering what was the end game plan at any point to get these games built?
Well, I think because we're building a pinball platform, all the games share a lot of similar components, and sometimes you'll be waiting on parts or a vendor, or a vendor has to be kept busy. So in the case of the artists, nobody knew the artists that I'm working with. They were all kind of secret for a reason, because I was kind of training them how to think about pinball. They're not from pinball, and although they're extremely talented, but the problem is they'll finish a project or they'll finish a group of work, and they're basically now going to contract themselves out. And I'm only talking just this one specific example, but they will now contract out. And so, in some cases, it might be a long contract to work with somebody else. And so therefore, I had to make sure that they were busy doing, working on pinball even if not on a full-time basis, because you can't afford to hire everybody full-time. But I think too with the Magic Girl and the Zombie Adventureland and then Alice, that was kind of like the three. There's no plan after three. And the three games define the company, and the three games kind of define the look and what you're trying to do and move it forward. So, again, was it kind of a proper way to move that, forward? Probably not. I mean, I see other companies doing it today where they have games stacked up and they talk about them, but they're still kind of working on their first game. And I think you get caught up, Nate. I mean,
sure.
It's when people call and they say, "Hey, John, that's really cool," or whatever, or they come and visit. People will come and visit and they see everything, but it just seemed to get, like I said earlier, it just seemed to get more complicated running the business, and we're making a creative product, but then also a product that needs to be manufactured. So the road gets very kind of wide. And it gets very just complicated, very puzzle-like, and you can make decisions that kind of don't work out. A lot of times, parts, different things you might be working on, a PC board design, it might take you 6 or 8 months to just get that one part developed because you're building something that wasn't done before. So then that one part might hold everything up, and it just seemed to kind of get more and more complicated, and obviously, handling it became, just huge, huge for me. A lot of hours and the cash burn. Obviously, the more you're not building anything, the more you're just spending money. And so
if I had come to you in say late 2012 or early 2013, and I just said, predict the future, when these games get built, where in your mind at that point where would those games have actually been built? Would you have done that in your factory, or would you have had somebody else do them? What do you think you would have told me then? I'm working on my hubris, but the building part is not that bad, and we build everything here. We have two studios. I mean, it's not real big. It's just 1,400 each side. The other side is just a build space, but as I mentioned, the games were designed and engineered to build quickly and correctly. So, but again, in small runs, because my mind was set up for small runs. But building 6 games a week, 4 to 6 games a week. I think Charlie does 4. He was doing 4. Maybe he's doing more now. So for a boutique maker, even 5. Say you did 5 games a week. That's a good production, and that's a very, very low number with a very low amount of people. So actually, the building is the thing that I didn't lose any sleep on, as far as how is this actually going to go together. But you can't build a pinball till you have all the parts. You can't put it all together. And I had people come, let me help you build, let me help you do this, and which is great, But if all the parts aren't here, or something's being engineered, or we had a few people that I worked with that they just went to Stern. They got a job offer and they left. And as an example, they went to another company. So now I'm stuck. There's nobody. If the project was left half done, and now we have to find someone else, and kind of And so all those little things kind of really add up. But yeah, the building part, as designers, we're taught to build. So at Bally, when I started at Bally, we were all taught to build a whole game from scratch. Do all the vac form plastics, wire forms, wiring, routing out the playfield. Great Commit has the same story of routing out the wood playfield by hand. So we were basically, if we were on a deserted island and we had the materials, we could build everything from scratch, in many regards. So I think my brain is kind of wired that way, and and I think in some ways it works really well. In other ways, you get kind of messed up because you're a designer trying to be a manufacturer, and it's kind of it's like an oxymoron. It just doesn't work. Why did you feel the need early on with all the projects to have your people buying games from you to sign non-disclosure agreements? Where did that kind of idea start and come from, and what was the value you thought was held there?
Oh, well, I'm an old school pinball guy. I grew up with a fax machine. In the old days, we worked for pinball companies. We all had small rooms, small offices. Our engineering was, behind locked doors. Everything was secret. We had code names for different things. And these are all pinball traditions from the 1930s. I mean, they're all old traditions. And you don't talk to anybody about anything. I worked on Star Wars with, we had a really great team. And my wife didn't even know what we were doing. We worked for 14 months, and then the game came out. But I mean, it's kind of like that. We just didn't talk. We didn't do anything. So you have like a paranoia, or they would kind of tell us it was more like good business practice because they're applying for patents and different things, and pinball is very competitive. So it's kind of a mix of the two. So when I came into the business, obviously that's just how my thinking was. And I knew we would be working on some new ideas and some technologies and just some new innovations for pinball that never been thought of before. And so, obviously you do an NDA and you create kind of a special club for people. But really all I did, later on I found out, people call, but really all I did is I alienated 90% of the rest of the pinball community that couldn't buy a game. They couldn't afford a game, or they didn't have room for a game, or, whatever the reason was. They said, you really kind of cheated us all out of you coming back to pinball to do this. And then I was like stunned, as it was like, wow, I never thought of that. I didn't think of it that way. I just thought I have customers and they've really kind of rolled out the red carpet to get this stuff done. They need to be treated special. But I didn't think about the whole pinball community, the 5,000 or 10,000 of us. I mean, there's not very many of us, but that I kicked them all in the nuts like from day one. It's like, well, you didn't order a game, so you don't get to see anything. You don't get to look at any sketches, and we'll put the odd thing out on Facebook or whatever, and it's kind of, you like to share. You know how it is. Nobody can keep a pinball secret.
Sure.
It just, it's so I learned, and then it was like, this is kind of like, what do you do? But I know if you go to some of the other companies, you're under NDA, and if you break it, you're fired. And as simple as that. But I found the NDA, people still talk. They go on a forum. It really doesn't do anything, and So I guess I really don't know what the right way to do it is. Ben and Charlie, or Ben, I mean, he lives. He's got like a webcam on his head his whole life. You can follow him, and and it was like, man, how do you do that? How do you? But that's what he was born into, or that's the world in his case that he created. So it was very easy for him to come over, and he would come and visit when they used to come and work, and he would take photos and Twitter stuff out, and it's like people want to see this, and I'm like, oh man, I'm having like a nervous breakdown here, and it was really hard, and I started to do more of it and do that, but then I found I wasn't very good at the social kind of I guess PR end of it, and in pinball is very boring. Pinball is very hard work. It's not real exciting. It's just monotony, over and over and over, getting all this stuff done to make a game. And people see it and they go, oh, I really like the game, or I like those ramps, or whatever it might be. But it just isn't like that behind the scenes. And so I would, blog out. We had different blogs and things like that. And I moved all that to the website. We're kind of rebuilding the website to make it more public. But people would tweet like, oh, nothing happened this week. And it'd be like, well, it was a week of doing drawings where you sit at a computer for 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, and you're doing cable drawings, or you're updating a playfield, or you're checking drawings because if you send to a vendor, if I'm ordering metal parts, you can't afford just to send it quickly, and perhaps something's not made correctly because you've just wasted a lot of money. So it's definitely, it could be weeks of doing stuff like this, and it just isn't the juicy stuff. Oh, here's a new cabinet, or here this artwork is finished, or here's the first screen play field, or whatever it might be. The news is not always exciting like that. So so I would kind of piece it out so I guess I really don't know what the best way is today. I'm very confused because I tried all the different ways. I tried the old school way, and I tried a hybrid way, and I tried more of an open, literally blogging stuff every 4 hours. And people like to see new stuff, and it's hard to keep the pace. Once you speed it up, it's hard to keep it up that fast. And Nate, I really don't know. I really don't know the right way to kind of do the PR and all of that. It's difficult. So
what?
So I'm more confused, and you lose confidence. You basically lose confidence in a system you believed in. I thought the secret system and NDA was the way to go, or I thought that other way was the way to go, and then it's like, none of it seems to work, at least not for me. I just seem to dig in myself in deeper hole. I seem to annoy more people, or it's like I don't have, I have the ability to know what the artwork needs to look like, say in an outline, but it's like I don't have the ability to know the correct thing to do or say on social media without offending someone in the game development kind of cycle. I just don't have that intuition for whatever reason. And obviously I've hung around masters of social media, and it's just, so I'm just like an idiot, Jimmy the Idiot Boy from Spumco, you're looking at him, and it's just like, wow. So I would need somebody to come in, or somebody to work with, or that just does it better. You do Coast to Coast. You make it look really easy. It's very professional. It's very interesting. Every podcast is different. It's just, it's just like, wow, how does Nate do this? And it's great. But it's like you just are able to do that.
Sure.
And you've learned it. You maybe in university, you took courses, you had professors, maybe through your guitar work, meeting rock stars and whatever. I don't know. I'm kind of like a worker bee. I come into the studio, I work, I go home when the work is done. I'm not like a sales guy where you're out there schmoozing all the time. I'm just kind of like a worker guy. So I think worker guys are kind of boring, and they don't say the right things, and they just don't have that kind of innate ability to, just to kind of put it out in a correct way. It's what people want to hear. It's in a timely way, and it's the right stage. Or we're going to do this now and do this now. And
at what point? Because I guess it was probably about 5 months ago when it seems like you were starting to have a lot of pressure. A lot of people were talking about coming to see John. I got to get an update in person. I need to see what's going on. It just felt like, for some people, the sands of the hourglass had finally kind of gotten to the bottom, and they were ready to find out what's the deal. It had been long enough for some people who had money on your games, and you ended up sending out this letter that basically proclaimed you had an investor who was going to take over the project and get the games built, which we later found out to be Bill Brandis. What got you to that point? What was that step up to the Pintasia situation that happened?
Oh, it's just, obviously in all of this, I need to apologize to everyone. This was not supposed to end up the way it is. Obviously, people that know me, I'm 52 now. Well, I've had 50 years or 51 years of no issues. I just work, I pay my taxes. I've had one speeding ticket when I was 18, never been in jail, never been convicted of anything. I mean, it's just not who I am. But I love making pinball, and I like really doing that. But I think it kind of was an unfortunate series of events, and obviously I'm responsible. I'm the guy, and I have to do my very best to not repeat things I've done wrong and all of that, and try and make it right. I'm still excited every day I get in. I have obviously a lot of different things now I have to worry about other than pinball making. But no, I think it was from my side anyway. Apart from John's way off the schedule and he doesn't answer his phone and things like that. But no, we went to Pinball Expo last year, and we had made a change in the Magic Girl artwork. So kind of in the late summer, around that time, the game just wasn't it just needed a small tweak. It needed a color tweak, and it needed just a few elements changed. And the reason I did it was to obviously get it done, but I knew that this game's going to be around a long time. So it's like, okay, well, let's just do it. So that's why we took the zombie cabinets to Pinball Expo. I gave a talk, kind of like an update, and the cabinets we took, we didn't put playfields in them for a reason. We didn't want to kind of show the playfield. I showed a bit of the artwork on the back glass, and the cabinets were all kind of built with the artwork. And the reason that I brought those, and we had them out in the hallway before the talk, and we had a lot of people coming and pulling at things and giving comments, and I was explaining and this and that. But it was just basically to show the philosophy of, well, when we start, we have this philosophy of what we want to build. And here is a built cabinet. It was one of three, or I think I brought two of the three that we built. And to show people, well, here's, the quality of the wood, and here's the metal, brackets, and here's the detail here, and here's the stickers we put in, and here's the cable. Look how nice and neat the cable is. And it was basically to kind of personify, in a way, my presentation. Because, presentations, you can BS, and you can say all sorts of stuff. But when you have something actually you can show to people, it really helps out. So we did that. But then also the Dutch pinball people had come, and they brought their Big Lebowski game. So I had seen it. I was over at Pinball Life. They have their kind of Friday afternoon party thing. So I went over there, and people were like mesmerized on this game, and it was like, wow, it was really cool. But what it showed me, and I called it the Lebowski effect. I blogged it out later on as the slide. As I went down the slide, or I'm going down the slide. And I just told people, these guys from Holland, or, they came over and they brought, a really nice working prototype, and it looked well engineered, and it played. And, of course they had all sorts of issues with all different things, but they kind of set the bar. They raised the bar that you cannot go to a show anymore with something that's just not really great. And at least that's what I took out of it.
Sure.
It's like, these guys came and they just kicked our ass. And it was like, so I felt really ashamed. And customers called me and they were like, man, we're really upset, or this, what are you doing, this and that. And I go, it's one of those kind of teachable moments. And so I came back and I gave the talk, and I don't spend a lot of time at Expo. I hang around a little bit and talk to people, and people would come to the studio or different things. A lot of people come and they're not with anybody. They're kind of the lost Expo goers. So we would basically pick them all up, and we'd bring them for dinner. The old days, we used to bring them to the house. We'd have a party. We basically would have we called it the anti-banquet. It wasn't that we didn't like the banquet. It was just that people didn't have tickets for the banquet, or they didn't know about it. So they'd be out in the hallway at Expo. So we'd bring them all up and kind of hang around. But then when I came back, after that, I was like, okay, well, all this blogging and all this stuff I'm showing people and whatever I'm doing, it's kind of like, it's just a waste of time now. And people want to see, put the game together, and give us kind of like the Lebowski effect. So if the back glass is missing or, the trim, well, get the trim done, get that bolted in, so I started to switch around just my thinking on all of this. And I started, up until that time before, I never announced dates other than what we had in the schedule. This is what we're working on. I would just give updates. And I would say, this week we're expecting, this part to come in, or next week we're getting the final cabinets in. And because I'm only a small company, I don't have much leverage. So I would be at the kind of wrath of a vendor or a subcontractor. So somebody's doing creative work, whatever it might be, I would have to wait. And I couldn't really do much because you have someone you've been working with for a long time, and you can't kind of like give them the finger to say, hey, man, you promised this on May 1st. We could if it was Williams, because we'd be buying, $100,000 worth of brackets. So, I mean, those guys are in their car, kind of driving over with the parts. In my case, I'd be buying $500 worth of brackets, and I would have to wait. And
sure.
But anyways, yeah. So I started this new philosophy. I was super excited. I did my very best to listen to comments from people, good and bad, and try and bring this around to say, okay, how do we now start to get these games in a way that people see them as a whole? They see them as a game. They're like, okay, no, don't show us any more artwork, no more brackets, no, we've seen all that, it looks good, so you can design a bracket, okay, that's wonderful. And we started to do that, and I started to give dates. Well, on this date, we're going to have this, and on that date, we're going to have that. And, man, it just, like, got worse from there. And, just one example, we spent about a year, maybe about 14 months with a new vendor doing our wood cabinets, all from scratch. And we have kind of a really hard kind of a vinyl laminate on the cabinet. There's no decal. So we direct print, kind of like what Jack was doing. I don't think they do it anymore.
On the early ones, yeah.
Yeah, but we have this printer. It's just this beautiful, like $1 million printer from Japan that prints on this. And it's UV coated so the ink doesn't fade. And we were able to print like on the cabinets, and you have all the seams and everything is just beautiful. There's no pinball cabinet like this. It's just beautiful. Would you believe? So they got all the fun. I spent all Christmas, didn't take any time off, or like Christmas Day and half a Christmas Eve, but literally getting all the artwork and going to the supplier, and everybody's working because we set dates. Magic Girl, we're going to show. I think it was like. It was some date in December, and then Zombie Adventureland was going to be like about 6 weeks after that. But would you believe the vendor, his printer, he sheared the head off of this printer. So this giant, it's like the size of a lawnmower engine, this head that goes back and forth, da-da-da-da. So we get the call, and it's like, the stuff's not coming right. It's like, where's the artwork? Where's the artwork? And we had spent, doing all the color profiles and the right material and on and on. Perfect. It's done perfect. So finally Al calls up and he says, I had trouble with the printer and, the head sheared off and this and that. So I traded it in and I got a new one. And we're like, great. He goes, there's a problem. It can't print on the material that you're using on your cabinet. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, because he was printing on like other materials that I guess are just the ink adheres better to. But the one material we picked, which for the cabinets and that, he wasn't able to print to, because we needed something heavier than like a vinyl decal. We need something that's just a little more like in the phenolic range. It's just a little harder. And we're like, oh, so it's like, oh. So we had to find a new vendor. So we spent, and it took about 5 weeks and of scrambling, and we finally found a new vendor. and we were able to get it all done. But I mean, by that time, that was, I think on Magic Girl, I was, easy 6 weeks late. And I had put some stuff, just, blogging out, we're having, this difficulty and that difficulty. So I tried to update people as best I can. But it was like, the date that was easily had kind of went out the door. And so it kind of started from there. So it started to kind of from Expo, and then after Expo, moving down, and kind of went from there. And then when Skit B closed, then that's, it kind of turned at that point.
That was sort of the moment where it really got hot.
Yeah, and people would just say, hey, you better go to Pinside, you're getting destroyed. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And I'm just kind of working, and it's like, well, and it just seemed to kind of like just, like catch fire. I was on fire at that point. And and it kind of just got worse and worse. And, I've never experienced anything like that. So you really, and I just like telling people kind of like what's going on. And I don't like telling different stories just to like make people happy so they go away. And I've just never been very good at that. And obviously you'll say things and you don't always remember everything you've said, but they always say, like, if you're not lying, like if you're telling the truth, then you don't have to worry about what you said because you're telling the truth. So it doesn't matter if you tell 100 people, the story should be generally the same. But so people will call up, and I just didn't really have good answers on stuff. And I didn't want to use like the vendor stuff. Oh, this vendor, that vendor, and I mean, there's the wood company was not the only areas of issue that I had, but it just seemed to when the Skit B thing hit. I had about a week or two of everybody was focused on them. And then it just, the War of the Worlds kind of Martian laser beam just came my way. And that was it, man. It was toast after that point. And just trying to now keep up and trying to give people answers. And people stopped sending in their kind of monthly payments. People kind of are on payment. Some people have paid up full. Most people were not or are not, and everybody just stopped. So I think the money we had budgeted for cash flow and things like that, and at that point we were just about ready to order the 25 Magic Girl game, cabinet, while we finished up we were finishing up the power supply and the bracket to hold the LCD, which actually was very difficult to design, and some other stuff. But so it kind of just held up everything. So then I wasn't able to kind of get that going, and that was kind of the next thing in line is to put the Magic Girl game together and have kind of a preview, but then also have parts coming in. And I blogged out, because we had kind of worked on our production studies and how much room and built different substations. I had some owners even come in and help out and build a few kind of substations to build stuff and kind of show them what we're going to do and kind of go from there. So it was kind of moving along, but then it just kind of...
I mean, do you understand how a buyer who had been sending in money on the game probably got to that point of just not wanting to send any more money? Do you think that was warranted at that point?
Well, I obviously I can't understand it because I'm not on the other side of the fence, but I had a few people come in and talk to me, and they just said, when you take people's money, even if it's $100, things change. And these were kind of some very, I won't say who they are, but just some very smart businessmen, and there were some of my customers, and they came in and they sat me down, and they're like, they looked at everything, and it's like, well, it's great, but you need to get games out the door, and you've taken people's money, and you may not understand what that means, but it's, you're in a serious situation. You can't, and obviously I realized that today. Back then it was, I needed more explanation, and I'm not completely stubborn, but I'm kind of slow, meaning I just like to ponder on things, because every time I do something quickly, I always make a mistake. I always screw up. So I kind of just take things slower and to go from there. But I understand that today. I absolutely understand. Yeah, you can't start a pinball company, kind of what I wanted to do, out of your basement. You know, you need someone that has an MBA. You know, you need a few team members at the core who they're good at what they do and you're good at what you do, and everybody kind of works together. And
do you think that one of the big problems there, though, is that, you know, some of these other companies that we've seen pop up, some with some success, some with, you know, failure, most of them seem to come kind of to the table with a game. That prototype is done, they have a flipping game that they can show off, and then to take money, it's more of just repeat what I did here. Whereas, you know, you were one of the first ones, if not the first, to sort of do the boutique thing.
But I was the first.
You were the first. So you did it more from, I have an idea. And then the funding came early, and people had to kind of finance the idea all the way through. And I think that's what's been frustrating for people who wanted to see you succeed. We're just waiting for a game. There still hasn't been a game to play.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, and I think you kind of assessed it correctly. It's like, this is kind of what I want to do, and you know, and let's not let's see how it turns out. It's just, this is what we want to do, and we'll move it through, but it ultimately, or it just is infinitely just, it's just a lot of work. And I mean, you know, you can look at all the other companies, and even the Medieval Madness, the remake. I mean, they're remaking a game that was made, right?
Yeah.
And you know, it hasn't been an easy task for, you know, I'm sure there's many reasons, but you would think, well, is that not the easiest thing to do, is to remake a successful game? Obviously, that's a complicated, successful game.
Sure, and remaking it in sort of a whole kind of different way, I guess.
But you would think, like, well, that's easy, you know? You would just, you know, a monkey can do that. And it's like, well, you know, maybe not. And,
So I know it's got to be really tough to watch kind of the support of these projects go from, like, really, really excited people who are sending you, you know, lots of money, to now you're at a point where you may have some legal battles going on with people, you know.
Yes, people are very angry, justified so, you know. And like I said, Nate, if they send me $1, I have to really covet that dollar. You have to be a much better steward in business. And, you know, many businesses aren't. Many are like, you know, give me the money and, you know, whatever, talk to my secretary. But in my case, because I'm a small business and I'm kind of a personality, I guess is a good, you know, I wouldn't say rock star, but
sure,
definitely a pinball personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, I have a responsibility to be better than that. And I'm a member of the community, and you know, people just expect more from me, and I never really thought of that, all of it that way. But today I can look back and I just see a lot more just decisions, or just ways that I should have operated, or just should have maybe just tried to do things a little different. But also, it's been very hard for me. You just don't have the answers people want to hear, because you're trying to just figure out how to, you know, keep your company going, or just try to, you know, kind of fix things or short up, or just get people involved to help you to be successful. And, you know, and I just don't like pandering just to get people off the phone. And people will call, and I mean, there'll be 2 hours of grilling me. And it's, you know, it's hard. It's hard, and you just don't want to say whatever. Oh yeah, well, you know, we're going to be in production next month, and everything is going, you know, good, and but it's all like a lie. It's just, there's no point to that, and you know, it might buy you 6 weeks, everybody goes away, but then they're going to be back, and they're going to say, well, you told us this, and it's like, well, eventually they're going to figure out you're just lying to them, and it's like, well, that's not really good.
How did you feel when you made the deal with the Pintasia Group about kind of converting people and pushing towards Magic Girl? Did you think that was a good plan?
Oh yeah. Just to finish off on that. Well, I mean, all my my presentations, I don't give a lot of presentations, but the last 3 years, at the end of it, I have the screen that comes up. If anybody would like to help, if you're a lawyer, if you're a CFO, if you're a fund manager, if you're a manufacturing engineer, whatever it might be, programmer, please call me. And people would giggle. They would giggle at my presentations. But I meant that. I was reaching out years ago to the pinball community, at least the people that came to the shows, to say, like, guys, I mean, I think you're a smart bunch of guys. There must be a few people that can come up and actually assess things in a way to say, well, John, this is going fine. This other stuff, you got to fix this fast. Get your production going. Your building is too small, or whatever it might be, just to come in. But Nate, nobody ever came to the door. Nobody ever knocked. Nobody ever offered anything to help out. And where they would actually jump over the fence. And I had, before Fantasia, I had a few other investment people come in, and they came in, and after a few weeks, they kind of like, no, we're not into this now, and whatever, because they really could see that pinball is not really glamorous when you're not at a show, and it's really it's no fun, it's endless work. I mean, just talk to Jeremy or Matt or some of the other people that I've worked with. It's just hours and hours and hours of this drudgery to kind of find this thing. You have to kind of get on the game. And so in the Fantasia people, and I talked to Bill a little bit, and Bill's he's a very successful, very smart guy, and I always admired Bill. It's like, wow, and how do people do this? How can somebody build a company and it does all these different things? And he explained a bit about his business and this and that. And it's like, man, I could never do that if like it was my last day on earth. I just do not figure out how these people do it. And I guess maybe it's kind of the same way I build up pinball. But so we talked to Bill, and eventually he kind of capitulated. He said, yeah, I think I'd like to help you. And he came in, and Sabrina came in, and I sent documents, and I did my very best to show them everything on the games and costing and all sorts of stuff. And they came up with their way to do it. So they had their kind of licensing agreement. And I had to send out these letters to customers, and this is how things are going to move forward. And I had full faith in this deal. And my lawyer didn't even look at the agreement. It was such. I had no reservations about these people at all. Obviously, I didn't know anything more about their business backgrounds, things like that. But I thought, finally, there's people on the planet that are kind of, are smart and are kind of honest and can kind of come in and help. So, and it was basically, Bill said, well, everybody's really pissed, and you need to go into the workshop, and you're going to work for free or practically free, and let's get these games done, and they'll handle the manufacturing and marketing and, selling posters and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, wow. But, I kind of, after we signed the deal, and then we started getting the Magic Girl game ready, or getting the parts on that were missing and all of that. But and this was before the Sabrina stuff kind of happened on Pinside. I sat and I was thinking, and I explained to my wife, and this my wife doesn't really do anything at the company. She we'll go for coffee and talk about stuff, but she doesn't. She kind of lets me, or, I'm kind of the guy running it. But I just said to her, I said, I'm worried. And she's like, why are you worried? And I go, I think Bill and Sabrina do not understand the amount of work this is going to be. And then I felt really sad, because it was like, this deal's not going to last very long. And this was before kind of the stuff happened on the forums, because it was like the way they run their businesses is not the way they would need a very large team to kind of do this pinball stuff, and it was like I felt kind of like cheap, like I kind of not like tricked them, but I just didn't convey properly the amount of work all this is going to be, that I know, and then the other pinball designers or the other industry people know. There's a small group of us that actually know how much work all of this, and just how much menial, just things that you have to worry about. Having 2 pins wrong on a cable drawing will fry all your driver boards, instantly. So things like that, and so then I kind of felt bad. It's like, oh man, these guys are so cool, and but then it was like but we got the game together, and I was told not to go to the Northwest show. Usually, a designer goes to the show. I wanted to do more like what Jack did, where he brought the game in. It's kind of lit up for a while, and then he lets people play a little bit. Then he closes the game up, and he took it away. I think Jack took it away the same day. He set it up at noon, and by 8 o'clock that night, the game was gone. And then you would come back, 3 months later with, okay, this code is, we got to do more code. This thing wasn't hooked up. That wasn't working. You go through the list of stuff. But it kind of, the game was shown in a different way. I wasn't able there to explain just, how the game started. And people that don't know the project. Like I said, the people that aren't owners. And the Magic Girl is pretty well everybody's not an owner. And just talk about stuff. Well, here's this, and here's King Arthur, and here's the magic lamp from Arabian Nights is on the game, and here's this device, and here's the Magna Flippers. We have Magna Flippers, but they're we didn't connect them because there's a problem with the cable, and if you connect them, you smoke the whole game, and then nothing's going to work. So people are like, well, the Magna Flippers aren't working. It's like, well, they were left unplugged for a reason, because there was a cable issue, and literally. We had a small team of people to come in and help, and we were working literally 18-hour days, standing up, and your feet are just killing you. And we got it, and one of the collectors from Portland, John Jamera, he drove it out, and everybody there kind of helped and tweaked, and we had a few ball hang-ups and different things, but it just kind of, and then that week, at least with the Pantasia, I was just waiting for feedback. Usually you do a post-mortem after the show. Hey, John, we did this. Here's the list of all the things people don't like, or everybody likes this. When is this going to be working? Whatever the questions are. And, but I just got wind from, another person that, they had gone on to one of the forums and basically said, we're not going to continue on with Zidware anymore. We're done. And I've been talking to them since. So I talked to Sabrina a couple times on email. Bill never called, not even once to explain anything. Even to say, hey, John, you're a big fan. Or John, whatever it is, just to kind of let it fly. And so then I had to start from scratch again. I had to kind of, basically try and pick up. And it took a while to start talking to people But yeah, after we signed, it was like, this is a lot of work. And it's like,
I got the feeling, and I will be honest here, I don't think I followed everything word for word kind of after this point, because once they tapped out on the project, I sort of had to get away from it a little bit, because it's an intense situation. But I got the feeling that they, like you said, didn't realize how much work it was going to be, and possibly, I think they thought the game was farther along and more almost complete than it was. Where does it stand now? Where is Magic Girl? Where would you say, in a percentage-wise, to a complete prototype, you're at right now with the game?
Well, I'm just looking at it now. The cabinet's all done. Obviously, the topper, all the artwork. All the trim, all that's kind of done. The cabling's pretty well done. We had some sound issues, so we have to revise that. And then with the playfield, this is a prototype playfield, so you would look for comments and for things to change and to kind of upgrade. But I mean, I would, and I think I told Bill this, I put it at around 75%.
Okay.
At that point, and the remaining is it's not so much that it's a lot of work. You could even say 90%, but just say 75%. So, but the problem is, like I said before, everything has to be done right. So if you're changing a ramp, if you're adjusting something, if you're moving a post, say you shoot the playfield and you have to move the post a little bit. Well, that post might affect the wood. You have your wood panel. It's going to affect artwork, or it might affect artwork. It might affect something underneath the playfield. If you have another bracket in the way, it might affect the playfield plastic on top. You're screwing something into the post. It might, you're mounting a magnet or a ramp. So even say doing a tweak, well, we need to move that post over a little bit. It causes a lot of extra work to do that. But I thought my intention, and we had talked about how long to get it into production, and I had did all the spreadsheets. So it wasn't like, well, here's the game and it's done. In this case, we had discussed everything, and I did long spreadsheets of, these are the parts that's missing, or these are the parts that we have to do a final, round of an update on design-wise. And these are the costs to get these items finished. Here's a kind of a timeline, how many man-hours, and, to kind of go from there. So it wasn't like, those things weren't discussed. Even the bill of material, people would say, well, you can't build that game for that, And it's like, well, we have a bill of material, in all the games. And I'm very good at costing. That's why the games in the past have a lot of extra stuff on them, because we would work with vendors and to try and get a little more in the game and get the cost down. And it's like a 7-page bill of material, 6-page. But I mean, it's, kind of every screw, nut, bolt, whatever's in the game. And you can see where you can save money. You can go through and do it. So those things were kind of looked after. But I mean, is it easy to get all those things finished and in production? No. Getting anything into production is not easy.
Where does the code sit for the game, and where was that work done? Kind of what's the programming situation?
Yeah, the code, we kind of have our own small hardware system, and I worked with I guess like contract kind of programmers, some different younger guys, and and obviously the labor is the most expensive, and software is the most expensive. I had talked to also some of the people I worked with at WMS, and some of them came here, and some I can't really talk about who they are, but I mean I talked to a lot of people, and most people were just some were I'm kind of doing this now. I really don't want to do pinball anymore because it's hard. And I think others were just going to wait and see how far John get along with this before he kind of gets everything done. But, doing like the operating system and all the test stuff and programming, and it's, it's a challenge. And I think like in the case of Pantasia, because Bill had asked me, and I said, well, I mean, I think we're at kind of, 65, 70% for all of that. Obviously, a lot is behind the scenes that you may not see. But, hardware and software has always been a crux of pinball, and it's always a difficult thing, even for the big makers today, getting software done, getting updates, and, bugs or mechanisms aren't working, you have some technical issue, all that stuff. I mean, that's hard for them to do. And they have very large companies and very large budgets. So in a small sense, it's even more difficult to do that. But I think part of the philosophy that I was using since I started, I wanted to work with as many new pinball people as I could and get them kind of into pinball. So whether it's, artwork or an engineer or a programmer or, whatever it might be, I was intentionally or just trying to not only use people I worked with before, I use Rob Barry for sounds and music, for the games. Rob and I did Circus, and he did, Cactus Canyon and some other stuff. But Rob's amazing, and so but sound and music kind of different. But for a lot of other stuff, so I think I went to bat, or took shot myself in the foot. I mean, which side you want to look at? Trying to bring more people into pinball. I think Jeremy, the art he's done, I think he's the best artist in pinball today. And obviously I have some, we have some secrets. We work together to get it to come out that way, but it's just phenomenal, the work, and you don't draw it up in 2 weeks and be done. But looking at some of the artwork that's coming out on other games, his work is just, bar none, it's just amazing. And it's good, and it's kind of what pinball needs. It's what we need as a community. We need more younger people, and there's no young designers. There's no 22-year-old pinball designer. I think Steve Ritchie at his heyday was 22 or 24 years old. I mean, he's pretty young, doing all these games. I mean, it's crazy, But today, everybody's, we're all kind of very experienced. We're seasoned, and we're not 22. And so part of my mandate was to work with people and try and pass on what I know to this new group, kind of the way it was passed on to me. So,
what are you doing right now? What's the plan? You and I had shared a few notes here and there, and I saw mention of ordering play fields, and I think you've referenced that tonight. What's the plan right now?
Oh, well, I mean, as I've talked a little bit in the blogs, and that is I've been able to, luckily, after Pintasia and a little bit before, to just talk to some other larger game companies or entertainment companies just about the business. I think one thing people were looking for was, we kind of don't want to talk to you anymore. We want to talk to smart business people who can give us the assurance that your company's running, or that the pinball company's moving forward, and all of that. So part of it was to I spend time talking with, making presentations with, meeting with other interested parties to get involved in pinball, and not just money, not just here, put money in, here, take half the company, but fill in the areas that need to be filled in from a business standpoint. And the idea was never to be a large manufacturer like Jersey Jack or like Stern or, kind of that regard. It was always meant to be a small company to do it that way. But in many ways, you still need kind of the kind of core people or core philosophy to do that. So I'm just, I continue to follow that route, and I've had some really great discussions and some really great, negotiations and talks to kind of do that. Obviously, I have to keep moving the games along, so I'm working on the PCB boards now for Magic Girl. We're looking at 3 boards to go underneath that handle everything. The cabling is really a challenge, and we decided not to do the network system where you have small driver boards all over the playfield, and you kind of network it out, and each one is like a node. So this node does this section of the playfield, that node does that section of the playfield, and I just chose to have a more traditional driver board system, easy to troubleshoot. Technically, it's less wiring because you don't have redundant power. You don't have all this extra stuff going around the playfield, let alone vibration. But in that same spirit, we can still use an electronic board or PC board to put, obviously, lighting and switches and some other things. So in manufacturing, it's easier, and carry that technology over to any game. So I've been, working on that, and obviously going through the list. I never got a list back from the Northwest show on actually just comments from people. I mean, I talk to people, and they kind of give me, their comments. So I've had to kind of go through and just piece on what I think people saw and kind of move that along. And same with Zombie Ventureland, the cabinets are done, and whatever wiring and updates we made on the final kind of Magic Girl, updating those systems as well because they're similar, and finishing up ramps on Zombie and doing some animations and kind of moving that along. And then on Alice, and I put some stuff on the website, but just building up the white wood and just kind of working it along because I had the foam model I did, last year or late last year. So kind of taking all that, moving it over and kind of, so the idea was to show all the owners that it's progressing, but also that, there's just some, there's just a lot of things that I need to resolve as a business. And then obviously, we have a group of customers that have decided to take me to court to get back their money. And that's proven to be kind of the most difficult thing to battle. Obviously, it takes time and it takes whatever money I have left personally, I have to spend on that. And, I'm not sure how it's going to come out.
How, I guess, I don't know how far you want to get into the finances of things, but how long can Zidware and you sustain the company, working on the games day in, day out? Right now, as I assume there's not a lot more new money flowing in.
No, all that's kind of dried up, and so it's it's tenuous. So I've been just funding it myself. I'm not a wealthy man. I drive a minivan. My wife drives a 10-year-old car. We're just kind of regular people, but so I don't have a big boat or anything. But yeah, so it's basically I'm just whatever money I did have put away is just gone back into the company, and to try and keep it moving along. And sadly, nothing happens quickly. So you can talk to someone. And I've befriended, or he befriended me, a former CEO from a very large Silicon Valley company, and he's been just giving just some good advice and feedback, and many of the stories I've had to go through, they went through in their startup. So obviously it's a much different scale, but. He would discuss, well, this is, we would work it, this way and social media, how they would handle it, all sorts of stuff. And so in one regard, you're kind of, you're friends, meaning like, wow, you have all the same issues, but obviously they, these companies are set up to succeed and to make sure everything's in place so you don't have any weak people in your system. Kind of doing that, and I'm the very good designer, but CEO I'm not. I don't have a CEO brain. I just don't think that way, and so it's I've never been so I guess behind the eight ball or challenged. I mean, whatever you want to say, it's extremely. It's extremely hard to kind of try and figure all this out. And because there's like the reality, you're trying to make pinball, you're trying to get these things done, but you have this kind of reality of life or reality of business that you have to deal with. And like I said before, we were kind of shielded from all of that at WMS. We had good teams of people that handled all that. We just, we do our work. So I'm definitely, fish out of water. And, like Gary Stern said, come on in, it's cold. And sure. He's absolutely right. And people ask, like, well, why didn't you call Gary or why didn't you call Jack? And it's like, well, I have. And I've talked to definitely the Stern people over the last, 3 years or more. I was the first designer that approached them when they had their new investors. I did them, I created an 80-page PowerPoint, how to market pinball, how to set up the different lines, like the different models and look at different themes and kind of all things like that. And after a while, they extended a very nice offer that they were going to try and support what I needed to make pinball. So engineering-wise, parts, SolidWorks drawings, all of that, and in return, I would share back any new technology or advances, maybe do some games for them. But again, this was all new territory because I couldn't just abandon everything I was doing at that point and go in, and obviously they're not quite sure where's John's kind of head at, because I'm not the easiest guy to work with. I don't mean it meanly, but I like things a certain way, and it grates on people. So, and their company, I think, is not like that. I think they're a little more, they're kind of all rowing in the same direction and trying to, make games, make profit, keep production going, and kind of do all that. But I turned them down, and for different reasons, and continued on, and so I think that was kind of, I kicked them all in the balls, not knowing what the great offer they did. And I've talked to Jack on and off a little bit, and he was here a little while ago, and we went through things. But it's all like pinball's just kind of big, whatever way you look at it. So as soon as you want to partner up or work with someone, it's not as easy as it looks on paper. One thing I think. Although now it's it's kind of hard to I guess stomach thinking of it, but if I had have actually, and literally, Nate, we were in I don't know if George would remember, but the one presentation I gave, the last slide was the slide that showed the partnership. I had the painting, the Sistine Chapel, God reaching down, and we were negotiating in the hallway a half an hour before the presentation, but I like I said, I turned down their offer, and I had to delete the slide and not show it by accident. But I think like today, I think if I had gone to Stern at that time, I think I'm a lot different today than I was then. I think I would have given them a lot of trouble, and I would have argued with George all the time on stuff and just be kind of like just a pain in the ass, where at the time they didn't really need that. They needed to rebuild their company and get people involved. And I think I wouldn't have had all these new design experiences, all this new engineering, all this new stuff we've made up until this stage, just through the studio here and working with all new people, and just kind of doing it that way. So if I had have gone, I don't think I would have come up with anything really exciting or much different than I did before. I think if I worked at Stern next week or tomorrow, whatever, I think I would have obviously a much different working attitude, working together, designing for manufacturing, looking at costs like literally to pennies, just things that are really important. But also, I think as a designer, I think I would just be much more valuable to any company than I was back then. Just kind of what I've gone through and relearning how to design. And like I said, working with Ben and Charlie, they really helped me to kind of revamp my just the way I go about laying out play fields and using, the 3D printer and all sorts of stuff. It's just and I'm really thankful for all of that. None of that's helped me, kind of to fix things and take all the customers that I've heard and that I've really kind of just not done a really good job with to fix that. But I think pinball-wise, and that's why I got into this, was to make good pinball. And I think, I think those things, and that extra kind of level I've gone up to as a designer, I think I'm kind of grateful for. So I don't know if I would change much, like in those regards, but yeah, it's like I said, I've never kind of been in a situation like this.
Well,
it's take it very lightly. Trust me, it's not a joking matter.
No, and I know you take it very seriously, and I've gotten that from you at all points.
Yeah, and I don't really care about myself, like meaning, things happen in life, but I feel very sad if we are not able to finish these games and get them out and save we call it the IP, the intellectual property, because that's why this was done. It wasn't maybe at the beginning, like I said, I the arrogant, prideful John from the '90s. I think, man, that's nobody needs that anymore. So I'm working on that. But it's just a shame. Alice in Wonderland is just beautiful. It's just and Zombie Adventureland is just they're all really nice in their own way, and they're good for the community. And like I said before, selling a small amount is not a good business decision, and also you're alienating. You're not letting a lot of other people enjoy the pinball work. And I know today a lot of new people have come into pinball. A lot of millennials and people just finishing college and going to barcade, having a beer and tournaments, and all the rest of it. So, and that's what motivates me, is to make pinball for those people as well, along with the collectors who want something just really better. They want some extra stuff or whatever it might be. So that's really that's the sad part in all of this, is that I failed like the whole community, let alone my customers. And
what would you say right now if you got off with me here and a customer called you on the phone and said, John, what's going to happen? I sent you my money on whichever game. What should I expect?
Oh, well, as I said a bit earlier, the money that's come in has been invested or spent in the normal course of business the last 4 years. And, I've been kind of putting in what money I have, and I'm still talking to some other groups. And so that's a really hard question to answer. I don't know that answer. So I don't know how to fix it.
Sure.
Just with a stroke of a pen or one phone call. Other people could. I just don't have that ability to do that. It's a big problem. I've reached out to everybody I know, and they know. I've sent them letters. They all got it, and everybody's just kind of keeping to themselves and go from there. If I would reach out to help somebody, if somebody called me, hey John, I need some help with this, and I would, being that we're kind of in a small group, and it's kind of like a bunch of pirates. But I'm also learning. It's business, and you have to run your business a certain way, and you have to make sure you get things done. And if you're setting deadlines and that, you have to hit those deadlines, and you just have to do a much better job than maybe a pinball designer can do.
Sure.
Even though he's a good pinball designer, it's just you're in business, Nate. You work at a large guitar company. Mm-hmm. You guys have big factories, and you make beautiful products, and you have rock stars and all sorts of cool PR and events and shows and on, and things have to run a certain way.
Yeah, and I cannot design a guitar. I promise you that.
Well, see, there you go, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're a hopeless guitar designer, but you're the best salesman, like in America.
We're trying for that, of course, but
yeah. So that's kind of my point.
Yeah,
you're on that side of the fence, and it all makes sense to you. It's like, John, some of this stuff doesn't really make sense. But
and it's a point well taken. I would have no idea how to build a pinball machine or design a pinball machine or bring that to life. And I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I really do mean that, because I respect you as a designer. I think that the whole story of the modern Zidware, as we've seen these games, is really unfortunate, and I feel bad for the people who have money who have this like hope and dream of owning this John Papaduke designed masterpiece. And I said it one time on a show, and it still rings in my head, because I thought it summed it up to me the most. It's like, I hope that all of this great thought and all this engineering and design isn't all for nothing, and that somebody actually gets to play these games, because
right.
it's not very real until it's actually being flipped and played and enjoyed.
Yep, I understand that, Nate. Yep. And I think that's also because when we're in the studio working, we see it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think you forget that nobody else is seeing anything, or not enough.
Sure.
And I think it's I think it's a kind of a something I understand now, that you need to get out early. And I know some of the other companies, I mean, they'll just take stuff out and they'll keep showing it and flipping it. I mean, they're at all the shows showing their stuff, and it's like, man, but it's for a reason, because they're getting feedback. They're, the next time they come up, oh, this is done, we got that fixed, and people can kind of see it and comment, and move it along. And I see why that's important now. And there's no excuse. I'm responsible, but I understand that more. How it's you need to get out and be in front of people and talk to them and show them kind of where you're at, and this is where the code is, and this is what's in, and this is this stuff will be in. We'll be at the next show 4 months from now. This will be done, and kind of go from there. And I definitely see kind of that side of the coin, and how that's like just vital. It's just one of the it's one of the veins of being a pinball maker. You need to do that. Unless you're just, like a larger company and you just kind of show it, oh, here's the game, it's done, or, it'll be in production in 8 weeks or 6 weeks. Put your, order your game now, and we'll give you a production deadline. And, that way it's a little different. But for pretty well everyone else, they have to kind of feed out some information.
Sure.
And kind of keep people in the loop, and that, hey, the thing's working, and, kind of all of that. So. Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on the nail head.
Is there anything else you'd like to kind of get out there while we're chatting for listeners of the show that we could touch on? Well, I mean, as I said before, I'm, I've never in my life had, so many people angry at me. The old days, you'd be stoned to death, so I wouldn't even be talking to you now. And how you can really hurt people, and you have to just do a better job of just dealing with it all. And when they give you money, or don't take their money, don't take any money until you're able to show a prototype or something. They have a better idea, and you need to really kind of you need to nurture, but you also need to be on top of that relationship. It's a relationship now. So they're not just a pinball friend; they're a financial friend, and these are things that are just very important, and you need to do. But I am as and it's not just I'm saying it, but I mean I'm as excited every day to kind of keep working at this. I don't quit on stuff. I'm very tenacious. I talk to people all the time about different parts of the business. People may not know World Cup soccer took 10 years to get made. By the time I was at Bally, I did lots of prototypes and Whitewoods, and then we got bought by Williams, and then I was at Williams for a while and got let go, and then I got hired back. But kind of from that whole period was 10 years, and I didn't give up. And I didn't know it was going to be World Cup. It was just a Bally game. Sure.
I didn't know, but I didn't give up. And it just kind of came out. And so if I hadn't given up, then I would have had no games made. I wouldn't have anything made, because I would have given up within that 10-year period. It's too hard, or whatever the reason is. So yeah, and I'm hopeful that. I will be able to put together, a solution and good news, and make people whole, and kind of turn it around. I know it's just not going to be easy at all, but but I kind of don't have a choice either. I mean, I have to continue to try and make this right, and you just can't go hide. You just can't go away or change your name or something.
Sure.
I've done this. I'm not kind of. People email me, "Oh, you're going to hide now." But it's like, where am I going to hide? It's like, I've. This is what I've done. This is what I've attempted. Maybe it wasn't a really smart idea to try and do all this in the first place, but it was. It's kind of like, well, why not? Let's give it a try. And but it's it just got more complicated. And running a business for the business owners that listen to your Coast to Coast, taxes. I mean, lop off 20%. So all the money that's sent in, 25% goes right to the government.
Yep.
And so and it's like that's like a lot of money that you don't have for development or for parts or something else. And paperwork. And Illinois is just not really a great state for businesses. And I was talking to the governor a bit. I wrote the governor, and he wrote back, and so we have a short dialogue we've started on smaller businesses that need help, and he's fighting his own battles. But the point is, running a business on top of trying to make pinball games, and it's just a lot of stuff that's piled on there, and you can't always just hire people to run it all for you, because things have to be done a certain way, and it's just definitely not like having a small freelance business. You do a couple jobs and you get a check, and you go to the next job. It's complicated, and I don't know how many people are at Stern or Jersey Jack, but I know they have dozens and dozens and dozens of people in the office just to do all the office stuff, the business stuff, and the reports and whatever, the payroll and on, and customers, and it's just endless. And so, yeah.
Well, John, I really enjoyed chatting with you and hearing the story from you and kind of going through it all. I know that this isn't the most happy way to end a talk and whatnot, but I do wish you the best of luck, and I hope that some solutions come out and that people get games or money or whichever way it breaks. And I hope next time we do this, we're talking about the games that are shipping.
No, that sounds great, Nate. And I always, reach out to people in the pinball world, and more specifically the Coast2Coast Pinball world. Head over to pinballinventor.org, and there's some contact info. And I would love to talk to anyone who, and obviously with more of a kind of a business finance background, manufacturing, to discuss things, because I just think we're real close to getting, Magic Girl to production, Zombie Adventureland's not far behind. Obviously, you need more code, but with everybody's used to updating code today, it's not like the old days where code had to be all done before you shipped. It's just a nice business, and it's a lot closer to getting them down the production line than not. So. And it's fun when you get to the end. When you're building it, it's not fun. But when you're kind of, when you're building them and they're kind of going together nice, and maybe you're at a trade show, or the old days it was on location, and people used to go on RGP, Rec Games Pinball, and they would kind of talk about finding a game and, scribing it all, this and that. It was, it's definitely, all the past kind of goes away. You get to focus on the game and all the new things, and it's it's good for pinball. It was an exciting time, but getting to that stage, it's just kind of a very long journey up a very large mountain. And if there's not much room for error, sadly.
Yep. All right, John. Well, I appreciate it again, and hopefully we will talk again soon.
Oh no! Thanks very much. I appreciate you inviting me on and to talk, and we'll talk soon.
I would like to thank you for listening to episode 197 of Coast to Coast Pinball. I want to thank John Papaduke for coming on tonight. I know this is of great interest to some of you, possibly not any interest at all to some of you as well. I get that, but it's a pretty big story in the history of our little hobby, and a huge, massive story as far as building independent machines goes. So the story's not over. There will be more, I'm sure. I don't know which way it'll go, but we'll be here to talk about it, analyze it, and hopefully we all learn from it. So thank you for listening. I will talk to you again very soon. Take care.